So I have my site open here, and I'm looking at my home page right now. Come over to the gear icon in the top right-hand corner. Click on Site Contents. And here you're going to see a list of all of your libraries and lists that are attached to the site. So in order to create our list, we're going to click on this new button here at the top, and we're going to click on List. It's going to pop up this window here, and you have two options. The first one is to create a brand new list, or the second option is to create a list from an existing list that you already have. So this is good if you needed to make a copy of one of your lists. Maybe you need multiple lists that are the same. Maybe you have a list on another site that you want to replicate on your new site. You could do that here. But we're just going to create a blank new list. And I'm going to give this list a name. I'm just going to call it test list. In this checkbox here to show in the site navigation, if you leave this checked, it'll show up as a header link within your site. If you don't want that, you can just uncheck this, and you can always adjust this after you create the list. I'm going to turn this off for now. And then I'm going to come down here to the bottom right and click on Create. So now my list is created. It jumps you right into your list. So you can see test list is what I created. And by default, you're going to get this first column in here, and it's going to be title. So by default, all of your lists are going to have the title field. You can rename this if you want to, but you cannot remove this field. If you want to rename that, click on the drop down next to title and click on rename. And you can change it there. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to leave it as title. So I'm going to click cancel. And now let me show you how to add additional columns to your list. So you can add new columns by clicking this add column button here. And when you click on that, you're going to get a list of types of columns that you can add. So here they are. There are a few more that aren't in this this list, but for the most part, you're going to use these. If you click on this more, you'll get some more options. For the most part, though, what you'll need is in this list. So I'm just going to click on single line of text. When I do that, it's going to pop up on the right-hand side to name my column. So I'm just going to call it, we'll just call it column 1. You can give it a description if you want to. It's not required, so you don't need to do that. And then it's going to come in here as the type of single line of text because that's what I chose initially. But if you accidentally chose the wrong thing, you can always change it here again. I'll leave it as single line of text. If you want to, you can set it as a default value. For our case here, we're going to just leave that as blank. And then you have some more options as far as some other details about this type of column. And I'm just going to leave these alone. All of these are fine. I'll click on Save. And now I've added my column 1 here. Let's go ahead and add another one. Let's add a date field here. So I'll click on Add Column, and then we'll choose Date. And let's call this Expiration Date. We won't give it a description. The type is already set. And all of this is fine for us. So I'll save that. And then you can see I can continue doing this to add any columns that I need to track. Let's do one more column here, and I'm going to choose this as a choice field. And we'll call this choice. And the type is already set. And then here are my choices. So this, when I go to open this form and I'm on this choice field, I'm going to get these options to choose from. So right now, no users would be able to enter whatever they want. They'd have to choose a value from here. So we have choice 1, choice 2, and choice 3. I'm going to leave these as they are. You'll probably have some other choices in here. But each line, when you go to a new row, is going to be a new choice. So every single time you want a new choice, so if we want to do a choice 4 here, I'll hit Enter and type in choice 4. And you can keep doing this. You can have as many choices as you need to. They just need to be on a separate line. You can allow users to enter values manually if you select this box. So they would have these choices, and then if they if you have this checked, they'd be able to enter in their own choice. For now, I'm going to leave this off, so I'll uncheck this, and then I'll save that. So there are a few of the columns that we've added. And again, you can keep adding as many as you need to, and just keep doing it the same way by doing the add column. So let's say you made a mistake and you need to now remove one of your columns. You no longer need it. So you can do that. So we can click on whatever column we want to remove. So I'm just going to click on this choice one. And I'm going to click the drop down here. And I'm going to go down to column settings. And I'm going to click on edit. So here's what we just saw when I added the field. But now you have this delete button down here. So we can click on delete to remove it. It's going to ask you, are you sure? And we can click on delete, and now it's gone. So it's pretty easy to remove those if you need to. I'm going to quickly add some information in here. And we'll just put some text. And let's select a date here. And we'll save. And I'm going to add one more in here. Okay, so now I have some data in my list. And now let's say I want to filter this down. I want to find something specific in this list. And I only have a couple lines in here, but your list may grow and grow, and you can have as many items as you want in your list. Now I want to filter my list down. I want to see all the items with an expiration date of today, which is November 11th. So I can click on this drop down here on the expiration date. And I can click on this filter by. And it's going to pop up on the right-hand side of the options I have available. So it's going to show up the data that I already have in my list. So right now I only have 2 rows. So you just see the dates that are in there. Click on the 11th and click apply. And now it filters down my list. So now I'm only looking at the items where I have an expiration date of November 11th. Now my data is still in there for the one that's on the 12th. So it's not removing my data, it's just I'm filtering down my list. And you can see it that we're filtering on this column by the little filter icon here. If you want to clear those filters, you can come over here and open this filter pane. And you can do the filtering through here as well. So I could click on, I want to see Title 1 as well, which was already in here. And I can uncheck my date filter and change it that way. Now clear all of them. I can click on this clear filters button and it removes my filters. So now it's back. I don't see any filter icons next to my columns. So I showed you quickly how to add new items by clicking the new button. To be able to edit your items, you can do it a couple ways. You can double click on the row and it'll pop up and you can edit your items that way. If you check the box next to your item, you'll see your buttons change across the top and we can click edit that way. So you have a couple different options as far as editing goes. So there is one other way to edit your list rather than editing each one individually, and that's using the quick edit. So if I click on the quick edit, this will put your data into an Excel-like format. So it's all in a table. So I can quickly add new rows here if I need to, or I can make edits to my items. So let's just say I'm gonna add another row in here. So you can just start typing in the columns. And we'll pick the 13th. So you can quickly do that and add your rows that way. Or you can quickly edit these. So let's say I want to make all of these with an expiration date of the 11th. So I can do that a couple different ways. I can copy this data and then paste into each of these cells, or I can use the copy down function, just like Excel. And so now all of them are the 11th. If you saw real quick, there was a little loading icon over here. That was just meaning it was saving. And then now that there's none there, it means your data is saved. So I can click this exit the quick edit, and there's all my data now with the 11th as my date. All right, so let's say you need to export all of this data and you need to put it into Excel. Maybe you need to run some pivot tables or something like that on here. You can, if you have Power BI desktop on your computer, you can connect to this list directly. So rather than exporting to Excel and then connecting your Power BI to your Excel file, you can just connect directly into the SharePoint list. But I'll show you the export to Excel. Like I said, let's say we need to export this into Excel for whatever reason. We need to just quickly run a pivot table or something like that on my data. So I can export this to Excel by clicking this button here. Make sure you don't have any of these lines checked. If they are checked, make sure you just uncheck them. So this will be a select all or deselect all. So just make sure nothing's checked and this button will show up here and you can click export to Excel. So it's going to export it, it's going to download it, and then we can click on it to open Excel. And there's our data that we have in here. It's going to add on 2 additional columns, which is item type and path. Those are just default SharePoint columns. They're not used really for anything. You can't change these. There is, so let's say you save this to your desktop or you save it to your OneDrive after exporting this. And let's say I add additional rows to my column or my list. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to add another row here. All right, so now I have 4 rows in here, but my Excel file only has 3. But since I exported this from the list, it'll have a data connection here. So I'm on the data tab. You'll see a connection out here in this is query, and your number will be different depending on how many times you've exported. But there's my connection. So all I need to do is click on this refresh. And it refreshed, and then there's my data, my new row that I just added. You don't have to export this every single time. If you save this, you can just come in here and refresh and it'll get your latest data. So I'm going to close out of this. And so there's one last thing that I want to show you on this list. So by default, you only have one version of this row. So let's say I made a change here and now I made a mistake and I need to switch that back. And let's say it's a few days after I made that change, I realized, oh, I made a mistake and I need to change it back, but I forgot what the previous value was for whatever column I changed. So every SharePoint list, you can turn on versioning, and that'll keep track of history of all of your versions of that item that have changed. So in order to do that, we're in our list, and we're going to come up here to the gear icon, click on List Settings, and we're going to see some details about our list. Like here's our columns with our types, whether it's required or not, and then there's some views down here. But we're going to click on this versioning settings. And then we're going to come down to this middle section here of the item version history. So by default, like I said, it's turned off, so it's on no, but we can turn this on. So if we turn this on, it's going to create a version each time we edit our item. If you just hit the yes here, it's going to keep unlimited number of versions. If you're not going to be making a lot of changes or you don't need to keep a history of a lot of items, it's best to check this and only keep a certain number of versions. I think a good number of versions is 10. Maybe you need 20. It's up. Okay. It's kind of up to you though. So I'll just put in 10 here and we'll click OK. And it's good to note that if you want versioning on your site or on your list, make sure to do that from the start, because if you do that later and you turn on versioning, it's not going to go back and it's not going to get a history of all the other versioning that you changed prior to turning on that setting. So I'm going to jump back to my list. And now I'm in here. So all of these are just going to have one version here. Even though I changed some of them, it's only going to have one version because I just turned the setting on. So let's make an edit to this first one here. And let's just put in more here. And I'll click out of it and it's saved for me. So now I should have two versions for this item. So in order to check those versions, you can click the checkbox next to the row you want to look at the versions with, and then click on the three little dots here at the top, and then version history. So I can see here, here's my first version, and you can see when it was created and who modified it, and you can see all the different values. And then here's my update that I just made. So I put in more here. So it's going to show you the column that changed, and then the value, and then who made it, and then when they made it. And let's say, for example, I need to revert this change back. Now I could just change the value back and make it some text instead of some more text. But let's say there's a bunch of values that changed and you don't want to individually go into each one of those columns and make those changes. You can come into this version history, click on the drop down to the version that you want to restore. So let's restore this back to the first version. So click the drop down. I can view it, I can restore it, and I can delete it. But let's restore. It's going to say you're about to replace the current version with the selected version. That's okay. And then now we have three versions because now we changed that back. So there you can see column 1 is back to some text because that's what it was on this version I restored. So there is one last thing I want to show you, and that is around the views for your list. You can have multiple views on your list. You can apply some filters to those, and I want to show you how to do that. If you just want one view on your list, by default, it's the all items view here. But we can change the order of these columns, how we want to display them. We can apply some filters and things like that. So let's just say I want to move my expiration date to the second position here. So in between title and column 1. There's a few ways I can do this. You can click on the column header and drag it in between, and you see the line shows up in between the title and the column. And then once you see that line, you can release and it'll move your date over. So now my view looks like this. When you do that though, the view is not saved. So it's temporarily just this view right now. If I want this to be the permanent view, so whenever anyone comes in here, they see the expiration date as the second column, I'll want to save that view. And you'll notice this asterisk now is on this all items. That means there's been a modification to this view, but it's not saved yet. So if I were to refresh here, my expiration date would go back to where it was before. But let's say I want to save this view and I want to make the expiration date the second column. I can click on the drop down here and click Save View As. I can change the name or I can leave it the same. In this case, I want to leave it the same. So hit Save. And now that's my view. So the asterisk is gone. If I refresh, my expiration date is now still the second one. I can come in here to this all items and I can edit the current view. So for the most part, if you want to move columns around, you can do that right here by just clicking and dragging. But if you want to apply some filters or some sorting to your view, you'll need to click on this Edit Current View. So we'll click on that. And now we see our view. There's our view name. We can change it if we want. Here's the columns that are in here. Most of these are default SharePoint columns. For the most part, any new columns that you add, they'll automatically be added to your view. Remove them if you need to. You can change the ordering here. This is just another way to change them. We did the click and drag, which is a little bit easier than changing these numbers here.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's this section here is the sorting. So by default, it's going to sort by the ID, which is the same as when the item was created. So it's going to show your oldest items first by default. You can switch that to be descending, so you can show the newest items first. You can sort it with another column as well. So it could sort by ID and then maybe by expiration date by clicking on the drop down here and selecting a column. Here's how you can apply some filtering. If you want to, maybe you only want to show items that are expiring today. So we can come in here, we can click on the column, and we can find our expiration date. And then if we want the items that are expiring today, we can keep this as is equal to. And if you read this section here, there is a way to set it as the current date, or you can set it as me. So the me is for people pickers, and then the today is for date fields. So we can put in here in brackets today, make sure there's square brackets. And then if we want to, we can apply some more filters. We can do and, or we can do or, and we can keep adding additional columns as we need. There's a few more options here. Tabular view you probably won't use. There's a group by, so we can group our items by a certain column. So maybe you have a status column and you want to group it by status. So you could do that here. We would just, if we had a status column in here, we would choose that. This totals. So let's say you have some currency fields or some number fields or something like that, and you want to total up the value of all of those. You can choose that here. You can also choose, some of these are a count. So maybe you want a count of the number of items in your list. So we'll just do a count on the title. The style, you can just change the style of how your list is. For the most part, the default style is fine. Folders, in our case, we wouldn't have any folders in our list. This is more for libraries. Item limit, that's just the number of items that are displayed on a single page. For the most part, this is not used anymore with a new modern list. It just, as you scroll down, it just continues to add more items. So this is kind of irrelevant now. And the mobile, that's all fine by default. If you have the SharePoint app, it makes it a little bit easier to work with the lists. But I'll click OK here. So I made one change here. I applied a filter of expiration date is today. So I'll click OK. And I did make the count here. All my expiration dates are today, but if I go in here and I change this one, let's make it the 12th. Let it save, and then come back here. And then we'll need to refresh. And then there, so now I'm only looking at the items with today as the expiration date, but my list still contains that item where my expiration date is now the 12th. So that item's not gone from my list. It's still here. It's filtered out of this view. So now that we created that filter of expiring today, let's save that as a view in here. So right now we're on the all items, which is applying our filter, but we don't want the all items view to have our filter on. But we want to keep a separate view for expiring today. So we can come up here and click on this all items, and then click on Save View As. And let's name this expiring today. And we want everyone to see this, so it's going to be a public view. So we'll save this. And then we'll come down to that view here. So there's our expiring today view. And that's how we switch between those views. So now let's jump back to the all items, because we want to remove now our filter of expiring today. So we'll come up back here on the all items, and we'll click on this edit current view. We'll come down to the filter section. So right now it's expiring today, and we'll click none. So this is just basically removing our filter. And we can come back up here and click OK. So now we've removed that filter of expiring today on the all items view, but if we switch over to expiring today, we only see our 3 items that are expiring today. That's an overview of how to create SharePoint lists and how to work with them within SharePoint.